2 young children vanish without a trace.
It's almost impossible for 2 children to have just disappeared without somebody seeing something.
Hours later, their mother also goes missing.
It was very odd. You don't see that in missing cases.
The first sign of any of them, this bizarre security video.
That was something that really stood out about this case.
Days of searching lead to a strange development. Their mother is found.
Wandering the streets, sneaking in buildings.
But the mysteries surrounding her odd behavior and her missing children have only deepened.
It's heart-wrenching. Some parents are missing 1 child, and you're missing 2.
Yeah.
The last Sunday Troy Turner spent with his 3 kids was nearly perfect.
It was actually my oldest son's first soccer game ever.
A beautiful summer afternoon in Montgomery County, Maryland.
We got snow cones and we went to the park for a couple hours.
The sun was out, the kids were playing.
It was early September and it was like 80 degrees, you know?
Everyone was having a great time.
Right.
Afterwards, Troy had to go into work, so he dropped his kids off and their mom, Catherine, at her parents' house.
I kissed all the kids, told them I loved them, and then got in the car and drove to work.
Troy and Catherine Hoggle had met years earlier at a bar in Germantown where they both worked.
Were you boyfriend and girlfriend when you had your first child?
By the time the child came, yes, but when she got pregnant, no.
So that was a surprise,
Yes.
but a blessing.
Yes, definitely.
By 2014, the couple had 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. The oldest was 5, Sarah 3, and Jacob 2. Troy and Catherine weren't married, but raising their family together.
What was your relationship like with her?
I was committed to making it work.
When Troy got off work that Sunday night, Catherine asked him to stop at the grocery store. It was after midnight before he finally made it home. Catherine was waiting for him outside.
She is actually sitting on the steps outside of the apartments when I get there.
Was that odd?
Yeah, I thought so a little bit.
And what does she tell you?
She needed to go grab like a Dr. Pepper real quick or whatever.
Assuming his 3 kids were asleep inside, and knowing Catherine's father, Randy, was spending the night, Troy took Catherine on a quick store run.
Like 3 minutes down the street, 3 minutes back.
He returned home exhausted and ready for bed.
Normally, I would have kissed them all goodnight. I was just tired, and selfishly in my mind, I was thinking if I wake one of them up, then I'm up. So I just went ahead and went to sleep.
So you didn't check the rooms because it was just a long day.
Right, and I had no reason to think there would be anything, you know.
But the next morning, when Troy's 5-year-old wakes him up, he notices the house is eerily quiet.
I realized that as I walked through the house, nobody's there except for myself and him.
Catherine's father had left for work, but where was Catherine, Sarah, and Jacob?
So I go and I look out the window and the minivan's gone. I open my drawer up where I keep the keys and my wallet. They're both gone.
Are you panicked?
Inside? Yes.
Troy quickly gets his son ready for school, then starts calling around looking for Catherine.
I called her father and her mother to see if they knew where she was. They both had no clue.
After putting his oldest son on the school bus, Troy calls 911.
So he called 911 from the bus stop.
Correct.
Just then, Catherine drives up.
When she reappeared at the bus stop, she was able to convince Troy that the kids were fine, they were at a daycare.
Catherine tells Troy she wanted him to sleep in, so she brought their 2 youngest kids to a daycare, something the couple had never done, but had been considering.
Was her story believable at the time?
At the time, yes.
So you're thinking the children are at a daycare center.
Yes.
But that afternoon, when it came time to pick up Sarah and Jacob, Catherine claims she doesn't remember which daycare.
That's whenever I really started to go, okay, what's going on, you know? I just pulled the car. I said, what street is it on? She goes, I don't know. I said, what's it called? She said, I don't know. I said, well, give me the phone number and I'll call them. She goes, I don't have their number. I said, you mean to tell me you put our kids at a daycare, you don't know the name, where it's at, a street name, or have a phone number for it? And she looks at me and she says, well, they have my number.
She's taking you on a wild goose chase.
Right, at that point, I called her mom.
Troy learns Catherine's mom is already searching all the daycares in town for the kids.
That was a huge red flag.
Yes.
Her mom knew something was up.
Right.
Catherine Hoggle can't remember the location of the daycare where she claims she has left her 2 youngest children. Their father, Troy Turner, begins to panic.
You have to be sweating at this point.
At this point, that's whenever I really started to go, okay, what's going on, you know?
Troy's sense of dread had deep underpinnings. According to Catherine's mother, she'd battled mental illness for years. Troy says he was never told.
Her family never came to me and told me about all the past issues initially. I think a good time for that would have been when they knew that we had a baby. I think that's a good time to let someone know.
After the birth of their first child, he claims he began to notice strange behavior.
There was that I was running around, which I wasn't, to there was a woman following us who wanted to raise the kids with me and take her life. And then it became things like she would have me pull over and cover her mouth while she was talking to me.
By late summer, Troy says Catherine seemed to be doing better, but as a precaution, he claims certain rules were in place, rules he alleges Catherine's parents agreed to.
She wasn't supposed to drive with the children, she wasn't supposed to drive, period. She wasn't supposed to be alone with the kids, period.
Everybody's on board. Everyone knows the rules here.
Right.
Or so Troy thought, until that panic-stricken Monday afternoon, when Catherine claimed she took 2 of the kids to a daycare, but can't remember where. After leading him on a wild goose chase, Troy tells Catherine they're going to the police station.
She said, well, hold on. She goes, we don't have to go. She'll go ahead and take me to where the kids are.
Catherine then gives Troy an address to a daycare. He heads over with her.
At some point in this journey, they stop at the Chick-fil-A.
Yes.
She goes, well, I took my medication. I need some caffeine and sugar to stay awake or whatever so I can give you directions.
When Troy pulls into the Chick-fil-A parking lot, security video shows what happens inside.
She went to the restroom. She said she was calling her mom to let her know we were going to get the other kids and everything was fine.
Phone records reveal Catherine actually tried calling a cab from the restroom.
So she went to the bathroom and she was trying to make an escape.
Right, which I obviously didn't know at the time.
As the couple gets ready to leave, Catherine says she needs a refill.
I said, okay, fine. I said, I'll go ahead and get the car started and let's go get the kids.
Security video shows Catherine return to the counter, but not for long as Troy waits outside.
She just goes out a side door and disappears.
I walk back in, she's nowhere to be found.
Cops are called and converge on the Chick-fil-A parking lot. Catherine's mother, Lindsay Hoggle, also arrives and gives Troy the shock of his life.
She said Jacob wasn't there last night.
Panic turns to terror when Troy learns his 2-year-old son has actually been missing since the night before. Remember, Catherine and her kids had spent Sunday afternoon at her parents' home. Sometime during the day, she borrowed her dad's car and left alone with Jacob. 3 hours later, she returned with a bizarre story, but without the little boy.
So she comes back 3 hours later without your son. What is her excuse?
He's at a sleepover with my oldest child's friend.
2-year-olds don't go to sleepovers.
Especially not with 4- and 5-year-olds. It makes no sense.
When Troy returned home from work that night, he assumed all 3 of his children were asleep in their beds. It turns out they were not. Troy now knows when Catherine and her father returned to the family's apartment Sunday night, Jacob wasn't with them, only Sarah and his 5-year-old son.
My oldest son knows for sure that she was there. They went to bed together, they hugged. And at the same time, it's not this delusional thing for him. He knows Jacob wasn't there.
He's able to articulate that to you.
Oh yeah, from day one.
No one knows exactly how or when Sarah went missing. Cops say they do know Catherine was lying when she claimed she took the kids to daycare Monday morning.
Do you think she's playing a game with him at this point?
I think so. I think she's a very convincing woman.
By that same Monday evening, a massive search was underway for Jacob, Sarah, and now their mom, Catherine.
Initially, did you think these children were alive and maybe being held somewhere?
That was our hope.
Montgomery County Police Captain Darren Frank believed, find Catherine, find Jacob, and Sarah.
Children weren't out wandering around. The citizens of Montgomery County would call us immediately. We knew Catherine was the key. We had to find her.
Hundreds of complete strangers joined the search, along with friends like Mandy Parks, who Troy hadn't seen in years.
I knew that Troy needed me. I knew that his children were missing, and I knew that Catherine had them.
Local media starts airing that security video of Catherine at that Chick-fil-A just before she vanished. For days, it seemed all of Montgomery County was involved in the search.
The community did their own searches, the family conducted searches, the police conducted searches. I mean, it really was the entire community.
Krista Brick covered the story for My MC Media.
This really has to instill some panic in the community.
Yeah, there was definitely panic.
Tens of thousands of acres are searched, close to 1 million missing persons flyers handed out.
At one point, the police were saying, please check your own backyards. They were asking businesses, check your surveillance.
Suddenly, new surveillance video surfaces of Catherine dressed in what looked to be the same clothes, going in and out of a federal building.
How far from the Chick-fil-A?
I don't know, about a third of a mile, if that.
This video is recorded around 4:30 in the morning, 12 hours after Catherine was caught on another camera ducking out of that Chick-fil-A. Especially concerning for detectives, Catherine is alone. Sarah and Jacob aren't with her.
We had strong suspicions that this was not going to turn out well.
3 days into the search, cops deliver grim news to Troy.
Detective Reuben comes up to talk to me. He goes, tomorrow we're going to announce, that this is a homicide investigation.
You thought they were still alive.
We still hadn't even found her yet.
But that was about to change. 5 exhaustive days. Search teams scour Montgomery County, Maryland for Catherine Hoggle and her 2 youngest children. Then finally, a break in the case.
Citizens saw her and recognized her from the wanted posters.
Montgomery County Police Captain Darren Frank says while hiding out, Catherine tried to disguise her appearance.
We determined that she had cut her hair.
And did she have a missing person poster on her?
Yes, she did.
So she knew everyone was looking for her and her children.
Absolutely.
But to everyone's disappointment, Sarah and Jacob weren't with their mother.
I mean, what happened to Sarah and Jacob? That's what everyone wants to know.
With 2 of his 3 children missing, Troy had not stopped searching since Catherine ditched him at a Chick-fil-A.
You weren't sleeping?
No, I went, there's a couple times I went 5-6 days without sleeping. At times I would fall asleep and wake up and feel guilty because I should have been looking for my kids instead of being selfish and sleeping.
Even though cops were already calling it a homicide investigation, Troy was holding out hope that Catherine would lead him to 3-year-old Sarah and 2-year-old Jacob.
I get the call to come into the police station, and that was whenever I pleaded with her to tell me where the kids were, she wouldn't.
Despite her alleged mental health problems in the past, Troy says the mother of his 3 kids seemed very well aware of what was happening.
She spoke in a normal manner as if there was nothing completely psychotic or anything like that.
And once Catherine is found, she matter-of-factly tells Troy and detectives the kids are safe.
I walked in the room when they let me in and she said, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I'm trying to find my children. And she said, well, they're not with me, they're with someone she trusted.
So she's saying that first she drops them off for a sleepover, then she's saying she took them to a daycare. Now she is giving you information and just saying that they're safe.
They're safe, they're with someone.
But detectives never buy Catherine's story.
Based on all our interviews, our investigation, what we know about Catherine, what we know about how everything transpired, we believe the children are dead.
Detectives allege that Sunday afternoon, when Catherine told her father she was taking Jacob out for pizza, she instead killed him, then dumped his body. They believe later that night, either while Troy was still at work or after he had gone to sleep, she did the same to Sarah.
That was something that really stood out about this case, that you have 2 children go missing at least 6 hours apart by the hand of the same person.
And shockingly, Captain Frank doesn't think Catherine was going to stop with Sarah and Jacob. He believes she allegedly had murderous plans for the 5-year-old next.
Who knows if Troy hadn't have been at the bus stop the next morning, what would have happened when Catherine came back to the bus stop.
Looking back, Troy now believes the same. He claims while out searching for their missing kids that first day, Catherine freaked out when he gave their 5-year-old to her mother, Lindsay Hoggle.
She starts saying things like, I don't trust her alone with the kids, she drinks too much.
At the time, Troy had no idea why Catherine would be opposed to letting her mom take their son.
There was no mistrust between her and her mom with the kids at any point that I knew of.
He now believes it's because Catherine was hoping to finish what she had started and get rid of their oldest child as well.
I think she was going to at some point say, hey, look, I'm going to take him to the bathroom or whatever, and then we'll go get the kids and try to just take off with him.
Because Sarah and Jacob's bodies weren't found, initially Catherine is only charged with a series of misdemeanors related to their disappearance. And because of her mental state, her time behind bars doesn't last long.
The doctor made an evaluation and made a recommendation. Catherine was sent to the Perkins Hospital for a further evaluation. I think that whole process took a week or so.
In the weeks that followed being committed, there was hope Catherine would lead police to the children.
Catherine did call me and request to speak to the police. She wants to give an answer on these children.
But when the state's attorney tried to make it happen, he was shot down by the judge.
The court has ruled and indicated that we're not going to be permitted to do that. I think the family is disappointed with that.
Over the last 3.5 years, at hearing after hearing, doctors deemed Catherine not competent to stand trial on the misdemeanor charges against her. Troy has been in court each time, appalled by what he sees.
Oh, that was a complete act today. She sounded nothing like that on any of our phone conversations, on any other conversations I've heard. That was an act. Either that was an act or they medicated her right before they came here.
You believe she's playing the system?
I don't just believe it, she's told me so much as that. She has explained to me her entire process.
Troy isn't the only one who believes to some extent Catherine is faking her mental illness. In a surprising twist, so does her mother.
She's very capable of being competent sooner rather than later. She understands the situation. The problem is she doesn't want to go to jail. It's as simple as that.
This is Lindsay Hoggle after one of her daughter's competency hearings in 2015.
So do you think that's having an impact on one moving forward with the case and how open she's being, that fear of going to jail?
Absolutely. She told me that. She made a conscious decision after the last hearing for fear that she would be sent to jail.
Catherine's lawyer says the allegations are ludicrous.
Catherine has been evaluated numerous times and is being treated by state professionals. They're not professionals that I hired. They are state professionals. To argue that after all this time, someone who hasn't seen her would know better than trained medical professionals, I think strains credulity.
On the 3rd anniversary of his children's disappearance, Troy Turner was outraged to learn that Catherine's lawyer could have gotten the misdemeanor charges against her dropped.
The way that competency works in Maryland, an individual can only have misdemeanor charges pending against them for up to 3 years. And if the individual's been in the hospital the entire time and not competent to stand trial, her lawyer can move to dismiss those charges on the 3-year mark.
Attorney Andrew Friedman says that's why last year, prosecutors moved to upgrade the charges against Catherine to 2 counts of murder, which will buy some more time.
A felony can be pending against a person who's not competent for up to 5 years right now in Maryland.
It's possible after 5 years she could walk scot-free.
Yes.
That's something that disgusts and terrifies Troy.
She could walk out of there in 5 years, and my oldest isn't even old enough to protect himself at that point, mentally, physically, anything.
Will Catherine be deemed competent to face a trial before it's too late? And can she be convicted for murder? For 3.5 years, the people of Montgomery County, Maryland have never given up the search for Jacob and Sarah Hoggle, desperate to find the brother and sister, dead or alive.
I never would have thought that 3.5 years. Sorry. I would have never thought that 3.5 years later we would still be looking for the kids.
Last September, on the 3rd anniversary of their disappearance, Troy Turner resigned himself to the fact that his 2 youngest children are never coming home.
I have held out hope that something else may have happened, as I think that any parent under these circumstances would. But it has always been a faint hope.
In no uncertain terms, he made clear who he believes is to blame for the deaths of Sarah and Jacob.
Catherine Hoggle has murdered my children. And I hope Sarah and Jacob get the justice they deserve.
But the doors of justice are slowly closing with each passing year. If Catherine isn't ruled competent to stand trial within 5 years from the day she was charged with murder, those charges could be dropped.
Hi. I can't talk right. You can't talk right now.
Catherine's mother doesn't believe a murder trial will ever be necessary. Lindsay Hoggle declined my request for an on-camera interview, but by phone, she dropped a bombshell about her grandkids.
You believe your grandchildren are alive and they are being held somewhere?
Yes, that's correct.
Do you believe that they're safe with whomever they're with?
Yes.
And you believe your daughter that she would not harm them?
That's correct.
Lindsay is hoping these age progression photos from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children will help bring her grandchildren home. But Montgomery County Police Captain Darren Frank is confident the kids are dead, and he alleges Catherine killed them.
Is it frustrating that she has not been deemed competent to stand trial?
I think, you know, the court system is what it is.
If Catherine does ever stand trial for murder, Captain Frank believes 2 pieces of security video will go a long way to proving her guilt. The first is the Chick-fil-A video when Catherine snuck away from Troy while searching for the kids.
If you look at her, she continues to look back over her shoulder at what's going on. Really, the hesitation of thinking it through. What am I going to do in this situation? She knew what she was doing. She needed to leave that situation. She needed to not be there with Troy when he met up with the police.
The second is the clip from the federal building Catherine snuck into hours after vanishing.
She had the sense to make it across the highway into a secured facility, piggyback into a secured facility to continue hiding. She wasn't wandering around the neighborhood.
Her actions were deliberate.
That's our belief when you look at everything.
I asked Catherine's attorney, David Felsen, about her behavior in the video.
Catherine is a young woman who has been for quite some time in the throes of profound mental illness. I'm glad that the investigators, and I say this with intended sarcasm, I'm glad that the investigators know what's in her mind by looking at a videotape.
Until Catherine's next competency hearing in November, Troy continues to search for Jacob and Sarah.
You've also hired a private investigator to look into this case who has done a lot of work for you.
Yes, he's been amazing.
Jared Stern has been working on the case for 2 years. Like police, he believes Sarah and Jacob are dead and Catherine killed them. He also believes the murders were premeditated.
Since they happened at 2 different times, it can't be something in a fit of anger. And whatever she did, she had to have prepared in some measure because it went pretty well.
But if Catherine did indeed kill her 2 kids, what did she do with their bodies?
It just doesn't seem like in those 5 days that she got very far.
Well, you're right.
Montgomery County detectives won't reveal what they believe Catherine did with the kids' bodies, but the private eye has his own theory.
If you ask yourself, well, where could they be? We know her condition, her level of cleanliness, etc. We know she didn't bury them. But let's say she did. She didn't bury them deeply, they would have been found by now. So that leaves a limited number of places. The waterways, which have not been searched by anybody, make for a logical next step.
So Jared Stern has now begun to search 15 bodies of water across Montgomery County using a newly invented underwater drone.
Explain to me what you're doing here.
Well, we're using a remotely operated vehicle to search the pond bottom.
Do you think it's possible these children could be in the water somewhere?
Let's put it this way. The bodies of water are the only areas that haven't been searched beyond the vast amount of ground searches that have taken place. So if one were to select places to search, it makes sense.
The tedious task will take time.
How long will it take you to search 15 different waterways in Montgomery County?
I'd say we're going to spend the better part of a year.
In the meantime, Troy Turner has no choice but to keep waiting, waiting for justice, and waiting to bring his children home.
If Jacob and Sarah could hear you today, what would you tell them?
I would tell them Daddy loves them, and Daddy's never gonna quit, and their brother misses them, and that they have a whole family at home that thinks about them every day.
If you know anything about Sarah and Jacob's disappearance, please call 1-301-279-8000.